Person for the Israeli Defense Forces. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Can you first tell us about the progress that the IDF has managed to make so far since it began its ground operations in Gaza?
Thank you for having me, and good morning. It's early morning here in Israel. We are on the 30th day since the October 7 terror attack in Israel that left more than 1,400 dead and more than 4,000 wounded. There are still 242 Israelis held hostages inside Gaza. Our ground operations are advancing according to plan. Our units are inside the northern part of the Gaza Strip. We have encircled the city of Gaza, and we are attacking Hamas infrastructure, location by location. The aim of our operation is to dismantle all of Hamas military capabilities and to make sure that the atrocities of October 7 will never happen again.
Now, the IDF gave a 4-hour humanitarian pause for civilians to move to Wadi Gaza. Was that successful?
Are aspiring to fight the enemy, and we have said very clearly that the civilians in Gaza are not our enemy and we wish them no harm. And in order to create a better chance for the survival of civilians, we have asked them to evacuate from the northern part of Gaza, which is the main area of operations, to the south. We did that 2 weeks and 3 days ago. So far, more than 800,000 Gazan civilians have made the right choice to evacuate from the north to the south, and we are still encouraging, amidst these high-intensity combat operations that are now ongoing, we are still encouraging Palestinian civilians to evacuate from the north because it is dangerous, and we do care about the life of civilians. We had, in the last 3 days, we made special corridors and windows of the opportunity for Palestinians to move south from combat areas to relative safety. And I hope that we will see a steady flow of Palestinian civilians leaving and not staying in the south as the human shields of Hamas militants.
But will such humanitarian pauses be given every day? What exactly is your role during such a period? Do you facilitate the movement of civilians? Do you aid workers and trucks also get a free and safe movement?
No, so what happens is that we stop the fighting. We don't engage with the enemy at that time under our initiative, and we make sure that there is a clear and reachable road and access to that road for civilians to be able to move towards the south. If possible, there's also vehicles that the Palestinians can use, local vehicles that are made available, but our part of it is to make sure that there's no fighting and that it is safe to travel on the main road that goes from north to south in Gaza. The road is called Salah ad-Din.
Okay, the last update from IDF said that Gaza was encircled and divided into two before you eventually move into the city. What's the status of that now?
That is still the status, and we continue to move closer and closer towards the center of the city. The center of the city is less the point. What we are doing is seeking and finding where the enemy is. It's above ground and, most importantly, underground locations, because in Gaza, under Hamas, and this has been the situation since 2007, most of that which matters is underground, and that is where Hamas has built an underground military complex of elaborate tunnels, hundreds, if not thousands of kilometers of tunnels that span across all of the Gaza Strip. That is where Hamas is hiding. That is how they continue to fight in spite of our presence. Those are the same locations that, if they cared about protecting Gazan civilians, they would allow civilians into those tunnels. But Hamas themselves, including a senior Hamas official, said so on an interview on RT, Abu Marzouk. He said that the tunnels are not for the civilians, they are for us, for Hamas, and that somebody else, maybe the UN, should take care of the civilians. That is the extent of the disdain and disrespect that Hamas has for the sanctity of human life, Palestinian life.
Despite you time and again standing up to the United Nations, again the Secretary General has called Gaza a graveyard for children. Not just that, he said that more journalists and aid workers have been killed in the last 4 weeks than in any conflict in the last 3 decades. You, of course, are contesting those claims, but there is visual evidence of at least some people dying. If not 10,000, then 5,000, 3,000. Why isn't the IDF at least minimizing the loss of lives? What are the measures being taken for that?
I agree with everything you said except for the last part. Minimizing and mitigating the situation is the responsibility of Hamas. Where it's sad to hear, and it is unfortunate. Each and every civilian death is a sad moment, and it's not something that we're seeking to achieve. But the situation on the ground where Hamas constantly, systematically uses humans or civilians as human shields, creates an almost impossible situation for us to fight in. At the end of the day, we have a mission. If we don't go in and attack Hamas in all of its locations and make sure that Hamas is dismantled, then at the end of this war, Hamas will be able to return to fighting and again target our civilians in terrorist attacks. And that is a situation that we are not going to allow to happen. And therefore, what we have tried to do is to move civilians out of the battlefield. Sadly, Hamas has stopped and try to undermine these attempts to get civilians out of the battlefield. But I hope that in the coming days, all of the remaining civilians in northern Gaza will go out, will evacuate, so that we can focus on fighting the enemy and the enemy alone.
You have released a number of videos to claim that hospitals are used as command centers or launch pads. By the way, for the Indonesian hospital, Indonesia as a country has contradicted it. They are saying that there are no underground tunnels, but also the videos that you have released. Is this a way to preempt criticism for attacking civilian facilities? If tomorrow these hospitals were to be struck, you are already creating ground to say, oh look, there was a Hamas structure underneath.
No, it's a way of informing Hamas and the world that we see what they are doing and that we are exposing their vile and immoral practices of using protected special humanitarian sites like ambulances, hospitals, schools, mosques, churches, and UN facilities for their military purposes. What they are doing is in violation of international law. Even war has laws, and you must conduct yourself according. We are bound and limited by humanitarian law. We don't apply all of our force because we fight according to the laws of armed conflict, and it is extremely regrettable that terrorist Hamas isn't doing the same. But we are exposing that to the world, and it is our intention to dismantle Hamas in order to make sure that we bring our hostages home and that 7th of October never happens again.
But during your ground operations, how is the IDF managing to draw a distinction between civilians and Hamas operatives? What are the mechanisms that you have in place?
Yes, we definitely do. And we focus on engaging the enemies, the combatants, and taking them off the battlefield. And so far, we have been very successful. Each and every tactical engagement on the ground ends clearly and swiftly with an Israeli advantage and a decisive manner. And that is exactly how we intend to continue. What Hamas does in order to make the situation more difficult is to have civilians in and near the combat zones to make it more difficult for us to use our capabilities. But as more and more civilians leave out of an instinct to preserve themselves, that is difficult for Hamas. And as time will go by, Hamas will find it more and more difficult to continue to fighting. And at the end of this war, Hamas will be eradicated.
But despite your claims of wiping out Hamas, you've lost 30 of your soldiers in less than a week. How and why is that? Is this a result of Hamas guerrilla tactics? And are you finding yourself outmaneuvered on Hamas territory inside Gaza?
It's mostly a result of the area that they're fighting in, the availability of advanced weapons in the hands of Hamas. Most of them, if not all of them, provided by Iran or by Iranian money. And the ability that they have built infrastructure, most specifically tunnels, all over the urban area, which allow Hamas the opportunity to secretly advance, emerge for a short period of time, fire an anti-tank rocket or a missile towards an Israeli tank or an APC, and then scutter back underground like the cowards they are. But we are finding the tunnels one by one, we are eliminating them, and we are dealing with the tunnels at the tactical level, and it is only a matter of time before each and every Hamas stronghold will be dismantled by us.
But how deep is this Hamas tunnel network? For weeks you've carried out airstrikes on them. Are they finally all destroyed?
No, they are not yet destroyed. There's still a lot of work to do. And as our ground troops advance, the friction with the enemy generates new intelligence and new capabilities. And that is a positive thing. And as the fighting continues, we expose more and more, and it allows us new availability and options to strike the enemy. And that is our plan for the future as well.
Okay, the final question I want to ask you is, your stated objective is the obliteration of Hamas. How close are you to that objective?
There is still a lot of work to do. We are according to plan. We are advancing. It is a very complex, densely built and saturated area with lots of enemy underground and lots of advanced weapons. But we are advancing according to plan, and we are confident in our ability to make a better security situation for residents of southern Israel and to again achieve security and long-term prosperity for Israeli civilians to live safely in their ancestral homeland and internationally recognized borders.